Sports Dynasty Podcast, the greatest podcast that you didn't want or ask for. And now introducing your hosts, Jake the Gluten-Free Karras and Peter Cheater Pigoo Hot Sizzle O'Donnell.
What is up, my homies, and welcome into the My Ply. It is your boy, Jake the Gluten-Free Karras. Today we are going to be talking about the Week 11 happenings in the league. Look at the playoff picture yet again. We are getting down to it. It is time to go. My computer is frozen. You hate to see it. Alright, let me see if I can fix this on the fly. Hold up. This is really good. I know. Alright. So it is my mouse that's screwing everything up. Okay. 1 second. I've got another mouse somewhere here. I'm sure these audios are lovely. Way to start. Alright, well, we will just have to do this super janky. Alright, so my mouse is causing my computer to freeze. Alright. In Week 11, we had a couple of great matchups. We had the 0-11 versus the 0-10 versus, spoiler alert, 0-10 versus 1-9. Jake versus Rich, softball guy. Let me tell you a little something about.
We all know softball guy. A lot of you are softball guy. Let me very quickly take you through softball guy.
So, Rich puts the hurtin' on me with one of his best weeks of the season. In our next matchup with, excuse me, Jimmer, generic team name, versus Eddie Disler. Eddie squeaking out a win, putting those picks to good use, turning them into points. Next, we have Jay Chal versus Hot Sizzle. Hot Sizzle gets the wood taken to him. Peter Cheater Pigoo Hot Sizzle going down by 30 points. Then we've got probably one of the bigger upsets of the week. Scott's Tots Ray Rat taken down.
Race world, traffic rate starts to tank.
Taking down the Iceman. Got it that time. That is Tom DVDA Sorrell, that anagrams to Lord Voldemort. Then we've got Brett Fitzgerald barely squeaking one out against Team Juan Solo. Huge win for Brett. That was massive. Brett pushed the chips all the way in, and he really needs to make the playoffs. As it currently sits, we have in first place Tom at 8-3, Eddie at 8-3, Jim at 7-4, Juan at 7-4, Brett at 6-5, Jordo at 6-5, Ray at 6-5, Pigoo at 5-6, Rich at 2-9, myself at 0-11. Now, the playoffs are we have 10 teams. There's 6 teams deep. So, Tom is already in. Eddie is already in. Jim, Juan, Brett, Jordan, Ray, and even Peter all still have a chance. Mathematically eliminated are just myself and Rich. This makes for an extremely exciting playoff push. Lots of things can happen. All right, so let's take a look at next week's matchups and break down a little bit about what we're going to be seeing next week. Peter gets his free win against me. That's just going to put him to 6-6. We have a huge matchup here. Jim versus Tom. If Jim wins this game, he cements himself, actually ties Tom's record, and cements himself in the playoffs. We've got Jay Chal, who's making a huge late season push. I think he was 2-5 just a couple of weeks ago. A huge late season push against Team Juan, the heavily favored Team Juan Solo. Juan also needs this win to cement his playoff. So Jay Charles really trying to keep it alive, and Juan Solo is really trying to cement his spot there. Ray Rat, it's so interesting that Ray Mertz has got his spot, but he's been selling, and he just keeps winning games. It's just kudos to you, man. I've been very, very impressed with your season. I really thought you were going to have one of the weakest rosters out here, and despite being heavily underdogged every week, you have managed to put together quite an impressive season. Eddie Disler, though, is a behemoth of an opponent, so best of luck keeping your playoff hopes alive if you do make it. I am open for business. Hit me up. Oh, baby. I took the melatonins again before recording. I gotta stop doing that. All right. They're hitting right now. Rich doesn't matter. So Brett gets probably a free win here. So Rich is really looking out here to play spoiler and ruin Brett's good time here. So my predictions for week 12 are that Pigu goes to 6-6. I'm gonna go with. I gotta go with the top dog here. I think Jim's gonna go down to 7-5 and be on the bubble, potentially having someone even like J-Tall or his brother potentially take his playoff spot over the next couple of weeks. Then we've got Juan versus Jordan. I would love to see either team win this. Honestly, makes it is interesting. If Jordan falls to 6-6, that's fine. But I think it's interesting that Juan is holding Jordan's pick, I'm pretty sure. So I would love to see Jordan win just to tank the value of the pick that Jordan has of his. Then we've got Ray versus Eddie. I definitely picking Eddie to win this, but again, I would love to see an upset here as Eddie's already got his spot cemented, and I just want to see as much chaos as possible. I'm on the bottom looking up like, wow, you guys are so good at this game. Then we've got Rich Rodriguez versus Brett. This one, I would like to see Brett pull it off again because Rich isn't playing for anything. And Brett really needs this W to keep climbing over Ray and Jordan, both of who won this week. All three of those 5-5 teams won, leaving only Pigu left out of the 5-5 club. So, week 13, we have 3 weeks left. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yeah, week 14 is our last week of the regular season. So after that, we have 2 weeks, which is week 12, which we just talked about, week 13, and then week 14. So week 13, we have the matchups in week 13. I've got the important ones. Jay Chal is going up against Rich. That is a likely win for Jay Chal to at least put him at 7-6 if he doesn't win this week. Ray's going up against Pigu. Pigu's going to be 6-6. Ray is likely to be 6-6. That one could have huge playoff implications as well if Ray does not get his win this week. Even if he does, it's still a massive game. And then we have Juan versus Eddie. Again, battle for seeding here. You want the highest seed so you can play against the worst team that makes the playoffs. And you get your bye week as well. I think it's the top 2 teams get a bye week. All right, then in week 14, the final week of the season, Eddie's getting his free win against me. J-Chal versus Jim. J-Chal is likely to be, at worst, 7-6 by the time he gets to Jim. Jim, on the other hand, has a much more difficult time of it facing Iceman in week 12, then facing Brett in week 13. Jim could be 7-6 by week 14, trying to stave off J-Chal, who's definitely going to be at least 7-6, for his own playoff spot. That would be an interesting narrative. Then we would have Ray, who is likely in week 14. Ray's got to go through Hot Sizzle and Eddie. That's a tall order. I think Ray might be 6-7, facing off against Rich. So Ray is likely going to be 7-7 by the time, at worst, 7-7, because he's going to get a free win against Rich. This is why another reason I love Dynasty is when teams are tanking, it literally creates free wins at just the right time of the year. and you get to kind of math out the playoff schedule here. So Ray is probably going to be 7-7 at worst going into the playoffs. If he can sneak a win in one of the next 2 weeks, Ray, buddy, you're looking good for the playoffs. You might actually make it if you make it to 8-6 here. All right, then we have Iceman and Team Juan Solo. I think Juan has got a more difficult road ahead of him as well. Maybe a little similar to Jim. Let me just double check that. Yes, he's got J Chal. So Jordo this coming week, I should say. Then he's got Eddie the week before. So he could also very easily be sitting at 7-6 here by the time he has to face Iceman and fight for his playoff spot. Extremely interesting. Juan really needs to pull off some wins here coming down the stretch. Pigu gets another middle-of-the-road team in Brett. Now, Brett has been an underachieving team this year, so I think Pigu's going to have a hard time of it. Again, he's got to get through Ray in week 13, Brett in week 14, and Peter has to be pretty much flawless if he wants to get to 8-6 and make the playoffs. He's an incredibly passive dynasty manager. I don't see him making a move here. I don't see him making a push or making a move. I also know he was not going to watch the show, so fuck you. You suck. You're a bad dynasty player, and you're not going to make the playoffs. Sucks to suck. All right. Hot Sizzle O'Donnell. All right. Enough of sizzling on Peter there. Oh, yeah, my mouse still doesn't work. I'm going off my phone. All right, so that's kind of how I see the playoffs shaping up. I think Ray is going to get there having at least 7 wins. Or if he can pull off a win in the next 2, he'll be 8-6 because he's got Rich in week 14. Worst he can do is 7-7. I think Jim could end up 7-7 if he doesn't beat J Chal, or if he doesn't pull off a win basically in the next 3 weeks. His easiest matchup is J Chal in week 14. Hot Sizzle O'Donnell has got a fairly soft schedule, but he's also the only 5-6 team in the league. So I think he absolutely has to win out if he wants to make it in. I don't see that happening with his squad. Then we've got I'm just kind of going all over the place. Ray, I think Ray has to pull off a win in the next 2 weeks if he wants a chance to move in. Now, he just took his chips out, trading away CD Lamb and a couple other assets. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens, Ray. If you end up fluking your way to one more win, you're probably in the playoffs at 8-6. So, boys, that's pretty much it. I think Brett is likely to get in. Brett's got a fairly middle-of-the-road schedule. He's got in week 12... Come on, phone. In week 12, Brett has Rich, so he's likely going to move to 7-5. Then he's got Jim, which is a tough matchup there. Could go either way. Could end up at 7-6. And then in week 14, he's got Peter, who's likely not going to make a move. And I think Brett will be heavily favored in that matchup there to make himself go to 8-6, but I think even at 7-7, Brett's got very good tiebreakers, and his points for is relatively high compared to the teams that have similar records to him. Now, if he's trying to catch some of the 7-4 teams, he's actually about 100 points behind in tiebreakers to both Jim and Juan. So if he's trying to take one of their playoff spots, if the bottom boys all come up and win out, you could see that happen. I don't think that's going to happen, but you never know. You never know. All right. That's pretty much all. The only thing I have to talk about, and we've had a couple of trades go down that I wanted to highlight. Some people making some moves to shore up their rosters. Hayden Hurst was acquired by Juan Solo for a 3rd and a 4th. Some of my 3rds and 4ths. Sorry, my Hayden Hurst for his 3rd and 4th. Melatonins kicking in, baby. And then Iceman shores up his roster with Mac Hollins, a great spot starter this year, with Hunter Renfrow missing the whole thing. CD Lamb, love it. And Geno Smith, one of the best values that Ray ever got. Kiss that man goodbye. And he gets in return A.J. Dillon, who's been useless this year. Less than useless. 23 first, love to see it. A 24 first, love to see that. And a 24 third. Now for Ray, I told him, if because I thought his roster was going to suck much worse than it actually has, that targeting those 24 firsts, you get them at a discount because they're 2 years out. People give them to you for cheaper. Target that 24 draft. Tank, since you still have your first round pick in 2024, I believe. Tank the 2023 season. Get the 101. Have a bunch of everyone else's 2024 picks. Go buck wild. Even get some 2025 picks. And you can do a 1 year rebuild. And you tank 23. Load up on talented rookies. And then in 2024, you spend your 25 picks on players. And you fill out your roster using your currency that you've acquired with your 2025 picks, which those 2025 first rounders are dirt cheap right now. People don't even know the names of the people who are going to be in that class at all. So those picks are dirt cheap right now. 2025 picks. So go out, buy yourself some, because in the 2024 season, Raymundo, you're going to be able to spend those picks for players. Fill out a couple of gaps in your roster. Maybe you spend 2 firsts on a stud young wide receiver, 2 firsts and a second or something like that on like A.J. Brown off of my team or something like that if my season's not going well. Give yourself some currency in 2024, with that being the 2025 picks. So you want to try and think like, what year do I need to rebuild? Now, yeah. We're not going to do a full roster breakdown. We've been going for 15 minutes. That's a great place to end it. Just keep it succinct. If you guys listened, thank you. I'm doing this for you. Mostly for me, because I like hearing the sound of my own voice in these side of these things. But a little bit for you too. All right, boys. Enjoy the pictures of fish. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Bye.